I'm Craig Heidemann. We're here at my law office in Bolivar, Missouri today. Now that's in southwest Missouri, north of Branson, the country music capital of the world. It's no longer Nashville, it's Branson. So glad to have you here today. Been practicing law since 1994, so however many years that is. Is that 20 years?
Getting close.
Yeah, 20 years. But I've been a photographer for a lot longer than I've been a lawyer.
And when did you start doing photography?
I started shooting professionally probably in 1987, so I don't know how many years that is, but I think it's 28 years.
And you were shooting film?
Started shooting film, black and white film. Did some color slides, but mostly black and white film.
What got you into photography?
Well, like a lot of folks, I started out in photography. I was the editor of our school yearbook. I was on the newspaper staff, and I went to school in St. Louis in high school. And the journalism program in the Hazelwood School District where I went to school was tops in the state in competitions, and so we did a pretty good job at high school journalism where I was at, and so getting to know the importance of photography and the stories that you could tell with pictures, that's kind of how my interest grew. Once you get in a dark room, folks don't understand how people used to catch the photography bug. It was once you stuck your hand in some photographic developer or fixer, and you saw that image appear in the dim red light, that's when people would catch the photography bug. Now it's when you get your first digital camera and see that you can put it on Facebook. My typical photography client's going to be a bride. I do predominantly wedding photography. I do some maternity, some portraits and families, and quite a bit of event and commercial photography as well. But my typical client's a bride. She'll be on her first wedding. She's probably upper middle class. She's going to have a photography budget probably between $2,500 and $6,000. Seventh grade. I was in a gifted program, and in the gifted program you had the option after school to do different club activities with the kids that were in the program, and one of the club activities that they had was a photography club. The curriculum for the photography club was you got to go into the dark room and see how pictures were developed, and then we took a field trip to the botanical garden in St. Louis, Shaw's Garden, and we had a photo trip there, and we got to shoot, I think we were given 2 or 3 rolls of film, and you got to bring them back and develop them and then print the images from that. And that's what did it for me. I didn't have a camera. As a matter of fact, 35 millimeter single lens reflex cameras with no internal metering system that were just coming out to the mass market. The camera that I had, I borrowed from my father, and it was an Argus. It's a camera about the size of a small brick. Square, has sharp corners, has a very small lens on it. It's kind of a rangefinder type camera. You had to use a light meter with it. So you either had to know what the light was. It's either sunny, cloudy, or you're in the shade, right? Well, you had to use a light meter, and took great pictures. It was and the story of the camera was my aunt had bought it in Hawaii in the 40s, and then she'd given it to my father when he went to Vietnam, and then he gave it to me in junior high school. So here I am with this little piece of family history. Learned how to make these images, went to the park, shot some images of the Japanese stroll garden there, Japanese garden, and I had that in my mind about what that was going to look like. And I came back and I took the film out of the camera, and you put your hands in the changing bag. You take the film and you load it onto a spool in this little black bag, and your hands are sweaty, and you have to practice doing it because you're doing it and you can't see it. And how's this going to work out? It's very exciting. And so you're putting the film on the spools, and then you put the spools in the developing tank, and then you can unzip it, and you hope that you've done it right. There's a little art here. So you unzip it, and then you take the chemicals and you put it in. You have to know the temperature of the chemicals, and you shake and tap and shake and tap, and then you put the stop bath in to stop it. Then you put the fixer in to fix it, and then you get to open it up, and you take the lid off, and you look in there, and there's the wet film. You pull the reel out. And think, this is a 7th, 8th grader. This is exciting for you watching this, I'm sure, but for me as a 7th or 8th grader, I was very excited. And you start to pull the film out, and as you pull it out, there's images on there, and of course they're reversed, and you pull it out, and there it is. You know, of course, you have to rinse it first. So, but before you rinse it, you can look at it, and you let it dry, and then you cut your negatives, and you make your contact sheet. You circle the one that you want to print, and you print the one that you want, and then you get to see the positive image coming out in the developing tank, and then you finally get to turn the lights on and see what you made. So there was no instant gratification. You know, we live in this world of I want what I want now, I want it now. And if I take a crappy image, I can take it and delete it in 2.5 seconds. But it takes a lot longer to know whether you've made mistakes in the old film days. And so you had to be a little bit more deliberate, and you had to think about it a little bit more, and you had to be a little bit more thoughtful about what you're creating. Forward after high school, when I went to college, curiously, after your scholarship money applies to your tuition and your room and board, you actually need money to spend when you're in college. And so I got a job on the college yearbook, which paid. So they paid you per picture. So we got paid to shoot. I worked my way up through the yearbook program, and we got paid to shoot for the yearbook. So you get paid per picture. So, and then also got a job with a company that did event coverage and did party pics through college, and we'd go out every Saturday and shoot 20 rolls of film or so, rolls of 36. And then I continued in law school, shooting commercially. We did some events, a few weddings, but basically was working 2-3 weekends a month, shooting events through law school. So I say I kind of paid my way through college and law school shooting. So that's why I've been a photographer longer than I've been a lawyer. I stay as busy as I can be with photography. My busiest year that I've had lately, I think we might have done 26 weddings. You know, I might average 13 to 20 weddings a year probably.
And how do you find time to do photography and law?
Well, you know, every professional photographer can give you great insight on appropriate and inappropriate balance of work and home. I've got a great wife. I've got 2 kids, and she gives me the freedom to be gone every Saturday. And you know, kind of where I am right now, wedding photographers, it's kind of like a curse, in that, you know, as you're young and you start out, I'm a bit older, I'm 44, but as you start out and you become more successful, as a wedding photographer, that just means that you're going to be away from your family more and more Saturdays. It really is a trade-off. But to the extent that that's your profession, you've got to know going into it that that's what you're going to be expected to do. So the way that I manage the busyness is, number one, I rely a lot on my wife to cover all of the Saturday events with my kids. And sadly, I do fall sometimes into the trap of the midnight editor, which I rail against. I think if you've got control over your schedule, you shouldn't be sitting in front of your computer in your underwear at 3 in the morning, you know, drinking Red Bull, trying to get that wedding done. Not that I do that. what I take away from the customer service that we deliver to the clients of the law firm and the customer service that we deliver to the studio clients is predictability. Everybody likes to know what to expect. And when somebody hires a lawyer, they don't really know what to expect. Most folks that come to see me as a lawyer are having the worst experience of their life. When they come to see me as a wedding photographer, they're getting ready to have one of the best experiences of their life. Statistically, it will probably be the first of 2 or 3 best experiences of their lives. The parallel between the two is predictability. Everybody likes to know what to expect. So I try and make sure that my wedding clients know how everything's going to work along the way, what things are going to look like at the end, and I think they like that. I set expectations with my photography clients, starting with the initial client consultation when we visit. I set expectations of the client in the contract that I use. I make sure that they understand the contract, and I put everything in it that I've told them that I'm going to do. And I also set expectations by creating boundaries. When a client asks me to do something that, I'm not comfortable doing or that might kind of affect the integrity of the work, I tell them no. You have to be direct in the practice of law, like a doctor has to be direct. Perhaps my bedside manner could use some improving from time to time. But if you don't set boundaries, you just set yourself up for problems. The biggest one that I deal with is we will include kind of a fusion video with some of our packages, and clients will want to include their own music in it. And I will not allow them to include their own music. I'll say, go out and see Triple Scoop, and my friend Roy Ashton has some great music at Triple Scoop. Pick one of those songs and we'll include it. Or, Song Freedom's got great songs. Or, Animoto, I can pick a ton of great music to go along with it. And I set those boundaries very clearly. And I get pushed hard. And I just tell them no. I say, if that's important to you, I'm sure you'll find somebody else that's willing to break the law, but to the extent that it's against the law and I travel around the country educating people not to do it, I'm not going to do it. Contracts are important in that I always tell folks, don't agree to do anything for an amount of money greater than you can afford to put on the ground and light on fire. And I mean that because if you don't have a contract and things go south, chances are you're going to lose whatever amount of money you agreed to work for and more by not having clear, delineated terms about what you agreed to do and what your client agreed to do. So yeah, I think contracts are very important. A lot of folks don't use them. A lot of people think, well, I can get away with it this time. And you can get away with it not using a contract until you can't get away with it. And unfortunately, nobody can predict which of our clients are going to turn into the one that we sure would have given anything to have a contract on.
Do you still shoot film at all?
I do, occasionally. I still have my darkroom at home. I've taught, my children have been in the darkroom. My kids, when they wanted to submit their first project at the fair here in Greene County, I had them shoot it on film. So they shot on film, and the only reason I really do it anymore is just to make sure that I've taught that skill to my kids. They're completely not interested.
Not at all.
No, not in film. It takes too much time. When you're in the world running at Nintendo speed, it's difficult to slow down to Kodak Tri-X pan speed.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get them to slow down to start to think about what they're doing. In the the iPhone camera really, I think, has brought back the popularity of the snapshot, which is truly just point, click. I've taken a picture of a moment, didn't think about it too much, and I move on to whatever I need to do next. So they're snapshot shooters. They like the camera for snapshot. They love Instagram. My 10-year-old loves Instagram, but as far as photography, I'm not sure that they're there yet.
You told us earlier a little story about your daughter.
Uh-huh.
And you have her come along on some wedding shoots with you sometimes?
Yeah, Abby, my 10-year-old, she's now 10, she's been coming along to weddings for maybe 3 years. She's probably done 5 weddings with me, more so recently than in the past. She kind of started out as a bag carrier, bag roller, Sherpa, hauling the bag around, and then I put a Canon 7D in her hands and put a wide angle lens on it and just said, shoot what you want. And she's done pretty well. You know, if you think about why we do what we do and why photography is relevant, because I think in the industry right now, answering the question, is photography still relevant? How relevant is it, and what's its role in the context of what it has been considered to be in the past versus what it is now, where it might be in the future? At its essence, it's about storytelling. I mean, photography is Greek for writing with light, and what do we write? We write stories. And I talked about Abby coming along and shooting. I just last night I was on Facebook, and one of my Facebook friends had posted this image, and I'm like, I recognize that image. It was an image that my daughter took at a wedding, and the client's mother was having a birthday yesterday, and her daughter took some time to write a note to her mother, and she attached this image that my daughter had taken from her little perspective behind me, squatted down at her little 10-year-old height. And that image, here it is. There it is. So anyway, if you can see this, it's just an image of the mother leaning up on her daughter's shoulder, watching their other daughter up here while during the speech portion of the wedding, and Abby was sitting down here, and I was focusing my attention down this way, and she just catches this moment, you know, in her little 10-year-old mind's eye or 9-year-old mind's eye, and shoots this image. And this is one of the most popular images of the wedding. And she just wrote this very heartfelt note to her mom on the occasion of her birthday, more than just a happy birthday, but really showed how touching her thoughts were for her mother, and then she attached this picture to it. So that just reminds me, you know, how important the storytelling aspect of what we do is. I got into, as my law practice kind of got to a place where I had a little bit more freedom with my time, and I didn't have to be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was able to kind of devote some more of my time to giving back to the industry, and I started doing a little bit of photo education in the area of business law, for lack of a better word, with a photographer's twist: copyright, property rights, rights of privacy, insurance, photographer liability. So I started doing that, within the last 10 years. And I've been really lucky to find, to meet a need that existed that really wasn't being met. There's tons of photographers that have great business advice, that are incredibly inspiring, that can teach you how to harness your passion, that can teach you the technical aspects of the business. But you know what? I learned photographers are lousy at business. And the statistics that 75% of all new business startups will fail in the first year, that applies to photography businesses. So in my local market at the wedding shows, I was seeing these photographers come and go from year to year at the wedding shows. You'd see all these new crop of photographers setting up their booths at the wedding shows, and I'm like, who's that? Oh, that's so-and-so. She's a new photographer. I said, well, I'm not going to bother to get to know her because, there's a 75% chance that she's not going to be here at the next wedding show. And that was true. And even now at the wedding shows, I mean, I'm like the old dog. There's me and 3 or 4 other folks in the Springfield market that have been around for longer than 7 years. And there's this new crop. And I think that's part and parcel to, number one, not being serious about making it a career or a profession, and number two, if you are serious, just not doing it right. So the photo education has been kind of an outlet for me to try and fix this problem for folks that are serious about it, to give them the skill set to to stick around for longer than a year. The biggest is probably undercapitalization. I mean, starting up a business, most businesses operate for a loss for the first 2 or 3 years before they become successful. And I can't think of many photographers that are starting out that could be, that go out and borrow to cover, their operating loss for the first year. I mean, if they, we live in a paycheck to paycheck world, and if you don't make enough money to pay the bills for that month, you go do something else. But when we start a photography business, it's like starting any other business. You have to have enough capital to make a go of it. You've got to get your name out there. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. You can do that by sweat equity, by going around and meeting people and developing relationships. You can do that by buying ads in the bridal magazines. You can do it by going to wedding shows. You can do it by giving away your work. Having a marketing plan is essential. The right marketing plan for every photographer is different. But at minimum, speaking to wedding photography, being at the local wedding shows, I think, is super important. Print advertising, probably not so much anymore. Having a smoking hot website, you've got to be able to drive traffic there, super important. But also, I think having a plan once you've marketed and you're going to have an initial client consultation, that's marketing too. You're just doing it in person. You've got to have sample albums. You've got to have wall prints to show. You have to be able to help a client envision where themselves in your images or in your albums, and a lot of photographers don't do that. That's one of the things that defined me growing up. Is I really wasn't afraid to try new things or fail at new things, and that's really probably what defines a photographer. Is you can't be afraid to fail. We can really get into a trap that the clients are generally always going to love what we give them because they're pictures of them. They love pictures of themselves, and I think I can think back to a couple of weddings where I just really wasn't happy with what I did, and I think that kind of encouraged me to continue to develop my skill set. Dawn Shields is in Springfield, and Dawn's a great photo educator and a great photographer. And she got her inspiration from working with Bambi Cantrell, and she and Bambi are friends, and she brought Bambi to Springfield, and I said, if I'm going to take it to the next level, I've got to hook up with some people that are at the next level and beyond, and really invest in that. And so I did some seminars with Dawn and Bambi, and I've done some other seminars through WPPI and outside. So I think that drives me to continue to grow, more so than just being inspired. I think you can be inspired and still be a lousy photographer, but to be inspired to get the skills necessary to be a great photographer, and not be the monkey in the room with the typewriter that happens to type the great American novel. I don't want my images to be accidents. I want them to be consistent and predictable and happen the same way every time, so that I don't have to have my clients standing in front of the camera while I take my 60th image hoping that this one's going to be the one. Professional was a word that grew out of the profession, which meant that you did it in a professional manner, or not an amateur manner. So that's, I think, what the dictionary definition of professional would be in profession. But professional photography is really kind of in a state of flux. I mean, lots of people get paid to do it now, but what is professional? I think professional is a standard of competency, a standard of predictability, a standard of customer service, a standard of creativity, below which you're not a professional. above which you are a professional. A great picture might not be professional, but the ability to go out day in and day out, day in and day out, even when you're feeling lousy, even when you're feeling uninspired, even when you feel like you don't want to do it, and delivering the same product, client after client after client, that's a professional. Once I did that in-depth seminar with Bambi Cantrell and watched her interact with models, and then started applying that to how I might interact, direct, or suggest to clients. Once I got really comfortable in that, that took me to where I am now, where I knew what I wanted them to do, and I wasn't afraid to tell them to do it, because I knew if they did what I was asking them to do, I could get the image that they would like. We're not posing things, we're suggesting them. And once you get comfortable with that banter back and forth and that with the client, once you overcome that fear, I think your images, improve 1,000%. So, kind of overcoming that uncomfortable feeling of trying to direct a client was something that I think I overcame, that improved my photography. Being able to define your style, people are in search of their style, and once you find it, being able to articulate or say it out loud what it is, that's a big step for a photographer, because there's a lot of folks that can't answer that question. What's your style? My style's money. I shoot whatever I get paid to shoot, is a lot of folks' style. We were at Creative Live and we did a panel discussion, and the question was, is photography in good hands? Is the industry in good hands? And I think the consensus was yes. Things are changing, and the state of the industry is such that it is impossible for an established photographer to be satisfied anymore with the status quo. You're going to have to go out and reinvent yourself, or reinvent your work, or make it more relevant or more topical, or interact with today's clients in a way that they want to be interacted with, and deliver the product that they want. And if the product that they want isn't the product you're selling, you're not going to do well with that particular client. So you need to go find the clients that want your product, or come up with the product that they want. And folks don't understand that fundamental concept. They think, this is what I have, somebody should want it. Well, maybe they don't. Provided that we aren't lowering that line of what is a professional, I think the industry's in good hands. Existing photographers should be concerned with new photographers entering the business stealing their clients, only if their level of work was so uninteresting that the clients that are willing to hire a brand new photographer with no experience, with 2 lenses in their bag and no external flash, with no concept of why 18% gray would be significant to anybody. If that's where their work's at, they should be concerned. For a photographer that has a style, that knows their market, that's comfortable doing what they're doing, that has a marketing plan, that knows what they expect of their clients, they should never be concerned, because these new photographers, there's no way that they can deliver the same level of product that we're able to deliver. They might someday, and when they do, then you need to take your work to the next level. Maybe be a little bit worried then, but it's a concept that it's a new concept. It's called competition. It's the survival of the fittest. And if you're the slowest wildebeest running across the river, you're going to get eaten by the alligators. And the same thing's true in photography. It's true in the law. It's true in every industry. So buck up. I charge when you're willing to stand behind your work in court when you get sued for delivering unprofessional results. I mean, that's my lawyer perspective. There is a level out there called professional photographer, below which you're not one, above which you are one. And if you tell somebody, I'm going to cover your wedding, and you deliver, if you do that work negligently, you can be sued for it. So I would start charging when I'm willing to stand behind my work in court. The top 3 legal issues facing a new photographer, and let's assume that they've got the skill set to go out and charge for their work. The three biggest mistakes that photographers are making, and I see this over and over and over again, and no matter how many times I scream this from the rooftops, no one listens to me. Well, they do listen to me. Yeah, I want to scream so that more people hear my voice. It's called sales tax. Every state has a sales tax generally, and photographers that start out are not registering to pay sales tax. They're not collecting sales tax. They're getting audited, and they're going out of business because they get huge checks from the government after an audit, a failed audit, to pay the sales tax that their clients should have been paying for an awful long time. The other mistake that photographers make is how they account for their earnings and how they pay their taxes. Photographers don't understand that they've got to hold back money to pay this little creature called the self-employment tax. And then the third mistake that they make is doing business in their own name. Doing business as an LLC is my recommended way for photographers to conduct themselves. It doesn't necessarily prevent you from being sued. It doesn't necessarily protect you if you hurt someone physically, but it insulates your personal assets from your business assets, and it creates a smaller pool that people can take in the event that something very bad happened. Let's say that I'm going to go full time. Well, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to come up with this little concept called a business plan. Now, I say that because so many people do it without thinking it through all the way. Professional photography is a rewarding career. It can be a lucrative career. It can be a successful career. It can be a career for a lifetime. But you know what? When we book out the hours that you're going to work as a photographer on paper and what you make at the end of the year, we have to know how many hours that is. And we have to be able to divide the hours into your takeaway income after you pay all your bills. And we need to say with confidence that you're going to make more money than the greeter at Walmart. Won't you agree? Because if at the end of the day, you've made, $100,000, but you've worked 4,000 hours to do it, you've only made $50,000. Unless, you want to work 80 hours a week. I don't know of anybody that enjoys working 80 hours a week that doesn't have some kind of a major or minor need for therapy. Is that offensive? I hope no one was offended by that. That's too much. Their life's too short. When we start to balance our careers with the rest of our life, there's a point that we shouldn't go beyond. And I've been guilty of being on the wrong side of it. I've been guilty on being on the other side of it, where I needed to spend more time doing what I needed to be doing. Well, how are you going to set your business model if you don't know how much money you want to make? We've got to know what our goal is. It's hard to get where you're going if you don't know where you're headed. As we pick photography as a career, there's an end goal of perhaps retirement. Photographers don't think about, well, how much money am I going to set aside in a retirement plan, or am I going to create a 401k, or am I going to have a Roth IRA, or am I going to have a simple IRA, or what's an IRA, or what's a 401k? Folks aren't thinking about retirement. I mean, when we look at these business failure statistics, let's look at the retirement statistics. Only about half-ish of the working population is paying in on a retirement plan, or is that going to leave you at 65 or whenever you decide to retire? The other thing is Social Security. You need to be paying these self-employment taxes along the way so that you can be paid into the Social Security system, which, if it's solvent by the time you get around to retiring, there'll be some money from the government to come back to you. We set up this new photography business. Well, what do we do next? Well, let's decide how we want to operate. Do we want to do business in our own name? No, that's very bad. We want to set up an LLC. So we set up an LLC. Now we've got a real business. We've got a tax ID number, and we've got our business entity set up. We'd open a bank account at our bank. Now the bank's going to want to see your LLC documentation. We're going to want to see your tax ID number. You take that to the bank, and now you got a place to put your money, because where we don't put our money is in our personal bank account. Bad. We want to take our money and put it into our business account. And that keeps our business expenses separate from our personal expenses, which is critical once the IRS knocks on your door and says, "Hello, how are you, Super Shooter Photography? I'm here for your audit. Please bend over and let me crawl in." Okay? And if you've done it the right way, there will be no problem. You'll get a clean bill of health. next most important thing in starting a new photography business is buying some insurance. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of insurance that every photographer has to have. And I've said this for years, and I'll continue to say it. If you can't afford insurance, you are not a professional photographer. I say that with unapologetically, because we owe it. That's one thing we do owe to our clients is if we hurt someone, we should be expected to pay for a mistake. If we have a car accident and hurt somebody, we're expected to pay for our mistakes. That's why all the states have mandatory insurance laws. So we have to have insurance. It's about $800 a year for some liability insurance and a little bit of equipment insurance. It's not cost prohibitive. The other thing that we need is it's called errors and omissions insurance. It's also, in my business as a lawyer, it's called malpractice insurance. And so that way, if our alarm doesn't go off on the wedding day and you miss the wedding, that's going to be a problem for you and the bride probably. And so if you have errors and omissions insurance and you make that kind of a mistake, it might provide coverage for you. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that we've done a little trademark search on our name to make sure we're not infringing on somebody else's business name. Probably need to do that at the same time that we register our company. But make sure that your name is not already in use by somebody else. I know how to figure out what my clients want and to kind of guide their expectations into what we decide to do together, which ends up being set forth in the contract that I give my clients that they sign. And then I do what I say I'm going to do in the contract every time, all the time, on time. Because when you don't, that's when you get crossways with them. And that's where you leave them unhappy, and we don't want to do that. The concept of how to run a business is not a secret. The concept of how to run a business correctly is not a secret. Information on starting and running a business has been around as long as there have been businesses, and yet 75% of all businesses that start are dead and gone by the end of the first year. So if we think about this scarcity mentality versus abundance mentality, as an educator, all I can do is give my colleagues the tools to be successful, and then it's up to them to go and do it. That's the hard part. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't have it in them. And it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's a lesson that's learned every day. It's a lesson that's learned by all those photographers that don't go to the wedding show anymore. If you think about photography education, it's come on strong in the last 10 years, but it's been around for much longer than that. Take a guy like Clay Blackmore, who he's a Canon explorer of light. He travels around teaching basic photography lighting concepts and client interaction concepts to photographers, and there's nobody that he's teaching to that's going to go take his clients away from him. He's teaching things like these novel concepts of split lighting and butterfly lighting and Rembrandt lighting, and perspective, and how to use the tools that we as photographers use. Teaching somebody that just teaches them basic concepts of photography. It doesn't teach them how to build trust in a community or build your reputation. I mean, that's where you have to go out and put in the work. And so I don't think photographers that have achieved a level of success, whatever that is, should hesitate to give back, because you know what? That's how they got to where they're at. They got there because somebody else helped them. And they got there through a lot of hard work. There's a saying that a rising tide raises all ships. So as the tide in the harbor comes up, all of the ships go up a little bit. And that's true in photography. As the state of our industry rises and the level of work that we're putting out goes up, it helps everybody. You know, for me, for wedding photography, if you think about what we do, when done correctly, we do the impossible. We take an event that you can't do over. You capture the story of it technically correctly, photojournalistically correctly, stylistically correctly, every time, all the time, and you make your client happy while you're doing it. So you're rising to this challenge of being able to pull that off, and that's a pretty scary. I mean, when you sit back and think about what we do and the responsibility that we take when we do that, that blows me away every time. I mean, and a lot of people I think do it, get into it, not realizing really what you're signing up for, and being able to deliver that expectation to the client is what inspires me. What they expect inspires me. A lot of photographers really struggle with some of the legal concepts associated with starting their new business, and what I've tried to do is put together a list of the essential forms that photographers are going to use on a day-to-day basis. Wedding contracts, model releases, property releases, copyright authorizations, minor model releases, collection letters, and I've included all of that on my Legal and Business Forms CD. It's available at craigheidemann.com for $89. You're welcome to get on there and order that. It's kind of a special for our friends at Framed. We've got employment agreements, partnership agreements, second shooter agreements. If you're going to use a second shooter, you want to make sure that you own the copyright. And that they transfer that to you, and you know what? You can only do that in writing. So unless you have employees working for you, if you have independent contractors, second shooters, you don't own the copyright to their images, yet you've been selling it to your clients. That's kind of a problem. So you'd want to make sure that you use an appropriate second shooter agreement and get ownership of that copyright before you shoot your next wedding. That's kind of one of the scary mistakes that new photographers tend to make. They get somebody to come along and shoot, and they don't take care of getting the copyright transferred. The other thing, we have event contracts and portrait contracts. A lot of folks enjoy doing boudoir photography. I mean, who wouldn't? Underwear pictures, I call them. But if you're going to do underwear pictures, boudoir photography, it's a special breed of cat with particular legal issues. So we've got a boudoir contract which limits your liability in the event that somebody takes those images and steals them and distributes them. You're not the one that gets sued because you're the one that has the deeper pocket of everybody that's involved. So we've got that included as well. We've got equipment rental agreements. I make my equipment available when it's not being used to other photographers that might need to rent some glass or rent a camera body, and we've got an equipment rental agreement included as well. So take advantage of that. It's online. You can order it. Postage is included. We'll ship it right to your door. Again, it's good for general concepts of the law. Everybody has to have should have an accountant and a lawyer that they can go to with questions. So if you decide to use the forms, do take it to your lawyer and make sure that they bless it for the laws of your state. But again, the forms are fairly general guides that you can use, customized. They're just Microsoft Word documents. You're fully able to customize them and edit them and make them your own and use them consistently as part of your essential legal workflow. I mean, you look at the work of, Jerry Guiones or Sal Sincata, or, the whimsical fairy world of Brooke Shaden, which I don't live in. I could, I don't. Or the beautiful glamour work, that Sue Bryce is doing. That all inspires me. It gives me ideas, but I don't go take other people's style and try and make them my own. And I think, inspiration is a tricky little thing, because we don't want to be inspired by the thing that we are going to go copy. We need to figure out who we are and go be that person, because that's who you're going to be the best at. You'll be the best being yourself than a copy of someone else. My name's Craig Heidemann. I'm a fun, fresh, fabulous wedding photographer, and I've just been framed.